All right, so looking at our distributed firewall, what I want to do first is I want to go to the NSX Manager and I want to make sure my exclusions are correct. So, as I mentioned before, you want to exclude your vCenter. It's very, very important that your vCenter is excluded. Otherwise, if you start enabling rules on your DFW and you block, for example, your default rule, you're going to lose access to vCenter. So that needs to be excluded. What I'm also going to want to exclude is my domain controller, because this is where my DNS lives. And if I don't put the proper rules in for my domain controller, which houses DNS, I'm going to be in big trouble. There's a huge play in DNS in this particular architecture. So I also have log insight. Let me exclude that as well. But I don't want to exclude my three-tier application. Okay, so I mentioned before that we have that three-tier application, which is web, app, and database. And I want to make sure that the rules I've put in place are accurate and obviously effective. So right now, there's this default rule that we have here, and that's basically permitting any on any service, and the action is allowed. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to harden our three-tier application and only allow the necessary ports to that workload. So again, we need to create rules for any traffic coming in through the DMZ edge. They're going to hit this this 10.255 1.5 VIP, and this VIP communicating with the web, and then the web servers communicating with the VIP presented by the internal edge load balancers, and then this internal edge load balancer communicating with the application tier, and then the application tier communicating with the database tier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show two things, right? The first thing is I'm going to show using the flow monitoring on understanding what those ports need to, what those access rules need to be, or access entries. And the next thing, when I'm going to lock down the actual DMZ edge, okay, we're going to use log insight for that. So let's go take a look at the first method, which is basically leveraging the flow monitoring. So let me go to flow monitoring here, and the first thing I want to select is what I see on the web. Let's just pick Web 01 on the web tier. So if I just pick Web 01, oops. All right. So I have my application here. And the IP address was 10.255 1.5, which is going to show again that the application works, that we're load balancing. Okay. And so we're going to look at Web 01, what that traffic is. And I'm going to generate some traffic here. Let me go back to that. I'm just going to just generate some traffic. All right. And I'm going to stop this. So basically, we're going to see, if I look at the in-out direction here, let's look at the in direction. So we see that the source IP is basically coming from the DMZ Edge using a high port as it's supposed to, and then the destination port being port 80 connecting to the Web 01 server. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to notice that all the ends, basically traffic coming in to this network adapter where the web server resides, it's coming in on port 80 and it's coming from the DMZ Edge. If I scroll down, in the out direction, we have the web server talking with the application edge load balancer VIP. I'm just going to make sure that that's the case here. So these are our rules that we're going to be writing. Okay, so that is the case. So let me just open up another window here. Open it like so. So we know that we're going to create, we're going to identify the web VIP or that DMZ Edge as any. And I mean, we could get specific and we could create an IP set. Actually, why don't we do that? Why don't we just create an IP set for any? So we're going to say DMZ Edge connecting to the web server. So we're going to create a web group, and that web group is going to have web 01 and web 02, and that's going to come in on port 80. And we'll also need to open up a rule that says in the out direction we have the web group. Let's see, the web group talking to the application. So that's our first rule. Our second rule is going to be this web group talking to the app VIP, which is going to be that load balancer on port 80. Okay, so those are the two rules that we need to do to satisfy the DMZ layer. Now let's change this to the application layer, and let's see what we need to listen on the application. So I'm going to start this. I'm going to go back to my application here, and I'm going to just refresh it. Okay, generate some traffic. I'm going to stop this, and I'm also going to look at the direction. So we have in, and we have out. So let's look at what's in. In we have the application VIP talking to the application app 01 here, right? Because that's the NIC, or actually app 02. .11 is app 02, because that's the NIC that we're actually looking at. So we have the application VIP, or the load balancer, not necessarily the VIP, talking to the application on port 80. And let me check to see. And then we have the application, which is app 02, talking with the database on MySQL 3306. Okay, so the next thing that we have to create here is another access entry, access control entry, that basically states the app VIP is the source, destination is the app group, and app group being app 01 and app 02 on port 80. And then we're going to have the app group talking to the database group. And we only have one database, but we're going to put DB01 into that group. DB0 on right here. And that is talking on 3306, also known as MySQL. Now let's just take a look at the database. Network card. Start that. Generate some traffic. Stop it. Yeah. So here I only see in traffic in the in direction, right, coming into the NIC, and it's all being sourced from the application tier or application group to the database group. So basically, this rule here will satisfy the database side. So let's go into the firewall and let's create some rules. So I know that if I come here and I change this rule to block, again, this is the default rule. So if I block this, my application should stop working. So I'm going to publish this rule, and let me go into my application. You're going to notice here that it's not refreshing, right? The actual distributed firewall is blocking that communication. So let's fix it. So what we need to do is create those rules. So let's add a rule, and let's call it any to, or actually DMZ Edge to web group. And the source here is going to be an IP set. So let's create that IP set. DMZ Edge 10.255.1.1. And the destination being, let's create a security group, and let's call it web. Let's add some virtual machines in here. Our 2 DMZ web servers are going to be part of that group. Okay, so we have our web group on port 80. Okay, so we're going to allow that traffic. Now we're going to add another rule. And again, I'm following these rules here that we put together based on the logging. So we need to now do web group to app group, and that is going to be the web security group talking to the actual, I believe I had an IP set here, to the app VIP 10.51.10.5. And that's going to be also on HTTP. Let's add another one. Now we got app VIP to app group. This one's going to be the app VIP to the app security group. App VIP talking to the app security group. So we got to create a new security group called app. Virtual machines. All right, and that's going to be talking on HTTP as well. And the last rule, if you remember, is the app group to the database group. in this case, it's just basically app to DB. Create a DB group. All right, and that's going to talk on MySQL. Okay. So by publishing these changes, what's going to happen is my application should start working again. So let me publish these changes. Let me go back to my application and restart it. There you go. So it's working again, and it's load balancing. So consider this a hardened three-tier application where only required ports are enabled between these server hosts. So now, let me take it a step further, and let me put the security in on the edges. Edges meaning the HA pair of DMZ edges. We're considering this as our internal firewall. So, there's some already pre-generated rules, and we're going to need to basically turn this default any accept into a rule that, or we're going to set this to block, and we're going to add some rules to make sure that we have a hardened DMZ edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my instance of log insight. And look and see. All right. So what I've already done is I configured syslog on this edge to point to my login site on the DMZ edge. So what I want to do now is I want to see what traffic comes into this DMZ edge, especially when I access my application, right? Now I know that this, in a real production environment, you're not just going to have a three-tier application. There's going to be other systems, so you have to account for them as well. But in this particular case, we're only hosting this application, so that's what I'm looking for to secure. So let's go to login site, and what we want to do is we want to target the DMZ Edge 01, and we also want to look at let's see. Yeah, so what's happening here is this is my rule ID. This looks like the permit any rule ID, so I'm just going to filter on this rule ID. Yeah, and I want to generate some traffic. Let me see what's going on. All right. So I see that traffic from the host that I'm actually generating the GET requests, accessing the VIP. I see that it's coming up here. I see that it's trying to connect to the VIP on port 80. I see that the web tier is trying to talk to the application tier, right, to the application VIP. See if we see anything else. No, that's pretty much it. So I know that I need to enable two rules to properly secure my my edge. So the rules I need to put into place here, let's take some notes. are, we need any to the web VIP. Here you could see on port 80. And we need to allow return traffic from the web tier to the app tier. So it's very, very simple. We're going to just put the web group. We'll just keep it simple. Web talking to the app VIP. It's going to have to be an IP set on port 80. So let me just let me block everything, and just to prove that it's not going to work. So let me deny the traffic here. Okay, go to my application, and you notice that it's not actually working, right? So let's make it work. So we're going to add a rule. We'll call it any to web VIP. Source is going to be any, right? Because we want anybody to access it. And the destination is going to be web VIP. So I need to create an IP set for that. So this is basically, you know, the web VIP IP 10.25.1.5. And that's going to be connecting on port 80. And then I need another one for return traffic from the web tier to the app tier. It's going to be web group to app VIP. And the source there is going to be the web group. Talking to the app VIP. And we got to create that. (10.251.10.5) on port 80. Okay, so let me publish these rules. Accepted the rules. So now, if I go back to my application, it should work because we already accepted any packets that are coming in for this request, for this 3-tier application. So let me just copy this, relaunch the browser, and paste and go. There you go. So now you have a really secured 3-tier application where what's happening is this DMZ Edge is only allowing port 80 to come in, and after port 80, you know, after the noise is filtered out at the edge, traffic is then allowing port 80 to basically be, you know, hit that VIP and load balance that traffic across the webs, and then the webs load balanced accordingly. So this is basically, you know, leveraging both the distributed firewall as well as the firewall feature within the DMZ Edge. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the NSX deployment, where we secure our 3-tier application and leverage the VXLAN and distributed firewalling, you know, distributed logical router, that floating default gateway, and all the cool features of NSX for load balancing and routing, etc., etc.